Hello, T-Post here with the Thank You for Being You show, an interview program where we explore the intersection between spirituality and imagination and creativity. My special guest today is Glenn Kakely, the author of the book, Your Power to Create You. Your Power to Create You is designed to guide you. It's a book designed to guide you towards self-discovery and a lifelong mastery of your innermost powers, where you establish a direct link with universal source. So welcome, Glenn. Thank you for being here and thank you for being you.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
Now, you wrote this book, you channeled it during the Great Recession of 2008. Why was it relevant then? And how is it relevant now during the pandemic of 2020 as we record this and beyond?
That's a really great question because I really see 2008, which was a financial crisis globally, and I see that being very relevant and to today's pandemic, which is again globally. So two global crises that our world is facing. All people are facing pretty much. Why it's relevant? Because I created this book to remind people not to get into the trappings of fear. So in 2009, when I started to write this book, it was all about empowering people and not to get swept into the consciousness or the thought process of fear. Because once we'll get swept right away, and then we're more likely to be a victim rather than to turn inward and rely on our guided strength. And that goes exactly for today as well. There is a global fear with this coronavirus pandemic. People are behaving badly, we hear in the news, grocery stores, out in the community. And I think people behave badly because they're getting swept into the fear. So this book was relevant then, and that's why I manifested it and created it. And I think it's extremely relevant today too, in order to prevent the spread of fear. The spread of fear, I think, is even worse than the coronavirus.
Now, fear is a very natural emotion that arises as we meet the unknown and the uncertain in life. And we project into the future, perhaps a worst case scenario. And we use negative what if questions around it. So what do you say in your book to address this fear that arises so often and so naturally in our lives?
I think, in my opinion, fear manifests because we feel alone. We feel like we're going through this, we're taking this journey alone. And in my book, the first part is reminding individuals I have an extremely, I'm very strong in my faith, in my belief system. And because of that, I know that I'm not walking through this life alone. And I think the individuals that think they're doing this alone and not really tapping into a higher power or their own inner power or inner strength, I think they're the ones who are more prone to fear than the individuals who really rely on an inner presence or a supreme presence.
That's beautifully put. And
Thank
that's
you.
exactly what I mentioned in the beginning was that the book is going to help you establish a direct link with universal source.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. All right. Taking that in for a moment, because that's very profound. I mean, we do feel like victims. Fear arises. We begin to close down. We contract. And the endless possibilities that are usually here and present scatter, and we're left with just crumbs of what are possible, and that's very discouraging, a very discouraging state of mind to be in. So this linking to something greater, than us, that actually is us, is so important in life and seems to be the next step in our evolution of humanity. I mean, it's always been here around. Perhaps in ancient cultures, it was cultivated more, but with the Industrial Revolution and the advent of scientific method, many of us have found ourselves separated from universal source, as if we're somehow just a random, senseless experience, lost in space. Yeah. So yes, that's so empowering to have that link. It appears in a 12-step program. It appears in so many, it appears in religion, but religion tends to distort it and create a dogma around it that becomes less empowering for the individual and more empowering for the institutions. So here we are democratizing spirit and creating an equal resourcefulness and connection to it for everyone. You know, it's not like the Pope has any more of a connection with God than each individual does.
Right. And I think, not to, really talk about religion today, because this is more about spirituality, but I think religions they kind of teach us that we have to go through their avenue. And then if we don't take their avenue, then we really cannot have that higher connection to that supreme presence. And spirituality, which is really my belief system, is it can be, you don't need a religion to get there. But of course, this book doesn't, my principles, if when used, allows anyone, whether you're religious based or not, to use these principles and to enhance your life with them. So I feel like these principles, so anyone who's really committed to their religion, I feel like these principles will only enhance their connection through their religion.
Beautifully put. Beautifully put. So it doesn't really matter what perspective you're coming from.
Right.
Your power to create you can actually add to it and empower it further.
Yes.
Yes, that's terrific. Wonderfully put. So I'm curious, when did you, if we could step back just for a moment from the book and talk about you personally, not that we'll get into any any details that you don't want to discuss, but I'm just curious, when did you first hear the call to go deeper in life?
I mean, truthfully, I have really been on a personal growth journey since I was in my late teens. I had a rough upbringing, and I wanted to get out of that mindset. I wanted to get out of that culture, if you will, that family culture. So I've been personally developing myself since 18, 19 years old, with different self-help books throughout the years, learning how to meditate and journaling. Journaling has been my go-to for 30 years. I started doing it right around 19 or 20 years old. And that's been key for me. That's been key for me to sit with myself. Sometimes I find journaling, well, it is meditative, because the whole point of meditation is to be with yourself, to train your thoughts. So that's been key for me. So to answer your question, I've been growing myself personally for about 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole purpose of it was to have a better life than I had as a child. When you're a child, you really don't have any choices. Those choices are made for you. As an adult, I immediately recognize that I am the master of my destiny, and all through choices and decisions. And I love being an adult because I love making decisions. I love the choices we have in our world, and I love the thought of choosing for myself. And as I choose for myself, and as the book teaches us to choose for ourselves, that's how we are contributing to our own evolution so that we can move ourselves forward.
Wow. Well, that helps me really understand the difference between journaling and having a diary. What would you say the difference is?
I think sometimes with diaries, and it might just be a term, but I think when, and I don't even know if this generation even knows the concept of diary. That's really more our generation, but I think it's where people would just throw their thoughts down. I mean, truthfully, I'm not even sure there is a difference. Um, Maybe with journaling, there's an actual purpose, and maybe that is the difference. With journaling, there's an actual purpose. There's a deliberate purpose for journaling. So yes, that's my final answer, because in the book, it is a journaling program that I have in my book, and it's designed with a specific purpose. So that would be my answer.
That's exactly the answer I would have as well.
Okay.
You said it, that you journal to improve life.
Yes.
And a diary is more of a, it's a recording of your daily experiences.
Mhm.
It may not be have intentions about what you would like to create, although it may. But
Right.
a journal goes beyond that, I believe,
Yes.
as I see it.
That was a great way to sum it up. Thank you.
You're welcome. So, how did this book come about?
Well, that's funny you asked. I will be very brief because it could be a 20-minute story if I really stretched it out. But to give you the cliff notes, I owned a business in 2007 through 2011. I sold it in 2011. And it literally, as soon as we launched our business, in a few months, the economy started erupting. And then 1 year later, literally 1 year later, about March of 2008, that's when the financial crisis really kicked in. I was still thriving. Our business was still thriving in the midst during 2007, 2008, 2009, as many businesses in communities all across America and across the globe were shutting their doors. And people, it was an espresso bar, like a Starbucks.
Mhm.
And people were coming in and spending $7, $8 on a Frappuccino while telling me how afraid they were. Their husband lost their job. They're losing their job. They've blown through their savings. They've lost their, if you remember back in 2008, 2009, people lost their retirement portfolios. And I really was taking a look at my business and listening to the customers coming in, all extremely afraid of their future. And I refuse to watch the news, and I refuse to get swept into the fear-based thought. And I really tapped into my inner presence and tapping into that higher presence to ensure that I would stay calm, clear-headed, away from fear-based thoughts. And as I started to manage that and realized my business was still thriving, as businesses all around us were closing, I started asking my higher power, what can I do? I was asking every day, what can I do to stop the spread of fear? What can I do to remind people that they have the power? And 5, 6 months later of asking myself that question every day, literally every day, because I really wanted to offer something to everybody so we could stop the spread of global fear. I came home from work one Friday evening. It was, I think, December 9th of 2009, whatever that Friday would have been. And I had just this inclination to get a legal pad of paper and a pen. And without having any goals of ever wanting to be an author, I started downloading this book, the concepts that were foreign to me. I didn't have any background in metaphysical concepts or universal laws or new thought philosophy. Zero background in this area. I filled the entire legal pad until 5 o'clock the next morning, and which is probably 100 pages. And I looked at it and said, I just wrote a book.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because once I made that connection, I just wrote a book because I was actually having fun. I said, okay, now what do I call it? And the first thought that came to mind was create and manifest your life. And I said, no, it's deeper than that. It's deeper than that. What do I call this book? And then the words, your power to create you, came into my mind. And it all happened in a, I don't know, 11-hour period, 10-hour period.
Yeah, yeah. So were you stunned?
I was. Yeah.
And when you were finished that morning, and I presume you got some sleep then afterwards.
I did.
What did you feel like once you woke up and then you saw it again?
I felt empowered, and I knew that I had something, and I was just over the moon because I was asking for the guidance to be able to provide something to people to help stop this, just the virus of fear.
Yes.
And I felt between what was on those 100 pages that I had to expand, obviously, over a couple year period, but just the title alone, your power to create you, that answered my question. And then the subtitle is discover your inner source of abundance. We all have this inner source of abundance. Nobody is absent from having this inner source of abundance. I believe with my spirituality that we came to this world with an inner source of abundance.
So the book, it sounds to me, is offering us a way to remember this innate power we have, this innate connection.
Yes.
That many of us have lost a relationship with. We certainly had it prior to our birth, if we accept the notion that we come from spirit. And then we go through the veil of this planet where we forget so much of our spiritual dimension. And here we are, born as a human being, kind of lost, and developing a personality structure and an ego to help us have a sense of security, a sense of purpose in life, so that we have some sense of control over things, although that we end up discovering that that's an illusion. But yet we do have the ability to manifest. And it may not be across the board and absolute in terms of our ability to manifest, because there are so many different aspects of reality that come into play. Other people's lives, our life as seen from a higher dimension, which says bad experiences aren't bad. They can actually be great for growth. And so when one has a car accident or comes down with a disease of some sort, it can actually be one of the most, it can actually be a very creative act in terms of personal growth. But what I was like really impressed by was your commitment to that question, to asking it daily, and to never forget about asking it. What can I do to stop people from spreading fear? And then having the patience to just wait. You weren't demanding an immediate answer. You were just being present with it.
Yeah, right? Thank you. And I think because I didn't have an answer. Yes. And I'm a very goal-driven guy, always have been, but it's not like I was looking to be an author and then said, help me write a book. I was looking for a solution to a problem that I recognized, and I was asking through a question. So I was open to any form of how that would, and I'm so sorry for all this noise. I can't believe it. But I was open to any avenue for that answer. I just wanted an answer how I could stop the spread of fear.
So the answer may have just appeared on a billboard or in a song.
Exactly. You're right, because other people who are creative in a different way, they do it through music and art, and jewelry making and pottery and things like that. So we can we can bring out a message in many different avenues. And I didn't know what the message was going to be, and I didn't know what my avenue was. But I found out that evening.
So that kind of space that you left open, I mean, you address that in your book, and I believe that you call it, it's a space where there's an absence, but yet you're open to it being filled, and you're not filling it yourself with presumptions and assumptions. Instead, you're allowing spirit or the universe or whatever you want to call it to come in and fill it. I mean, that's a very kind of Buddhist Zen principle, and yet it doesn't sound like you have a background in Zen Buddhism or anything like that, do you?
I do not. No. Yeah.
So
Yeah, I
tell me
didn't
a little
have.
bit about that.
Yeah, so, and then just to kind of address that, when the book was finalized, it was finalized in about 2012. I didn't get published for another year. Um, I didn't have the confidence to publish it right away because, again, these were foreign principles to me. So I then went on a journey to ask the universe, show me other resources that will substantiate and support the concepts of my book. And I was moved over time, over about that year period, I was moved to two different books, one from Louise Hay and one from Abraham Hicks, Esther and Jerry Hicks. And those two books, book from each of those authors, supported the principles of my book. And then I felt confident that my book had merit.
Yes, yes. Yeah, it definitely is. And it does. I see it as part of the pantheon of I mean, some people call it the New Age, and some people disparage that term because it can include so much unnecessary and unuseful information and teachings. But yet, here we are. I do feel that the world is changing and we're waking up. We're waking up to our power as creators. I believe we're seeing that now. We're recording this now, June 13th, 2020. We've got the protests throughout the US, around the world, concerning Black Lives Matter and the long history of police brutality and the need for things to change. So we're in the midst of change. You talked about the virus of fear earlier, which is a great phrase. And here we are in the midst of this virus that has created fear.
It has.
And has kind of stopped the world in its tracks. So many of us have lost employment, at least for temporarily, and shops have closed, businesses have closed down to a large extent, and people are working from their homes where they can. And the nature of our interrelationships has changed dramatically, and then there's the stress and tension behind it. Being lost in this kind of uncertainty and the unknown of it all. And so the virus of, you can very well see this as sort of like a physical representation, COVID-19 as a fear virus. And so I really like that metaphor.
Thank you.
Hmm. I'm curious. I mean, could you give us any other examples of issues that you've worked on in your life where you've seen like substantial change for the better?
Well, could you repeat that question one more time?
Yeah, I'm just looking for examples in your life. You know, we all have issues in our lives, and we want to change them for the better.
Yes.
You know, and so many of us know that that requires taking inventory of
Right.
what we think, of what we believe,
Mhm.
and changing that,
Mhm.
renewing our sense of self and our and introducing new beliefs that are expansive, that are empowering. So, and I know you've applied this book to your life.
Mhm.
And so I'm just wondering if you could give us another example of how following this, your book's structure, where you've seen substantial change for the better.
Yep. So I'll give you an example, which is in the book, about me selling our business.
Mhm.
Um, it took quite a while until I started applying these principles. But as soon as I applied these principles, I started applying these principles in May of 2010. I did my 40-day program from this book, so that would have finished me up right near the end of July, first part of August of 2010, and we sold our business the following March. But this is a spiritual transformation, personal growth, and a manifestation program that's contained in my book. I have done my own program countless times, um, maybe 30 or 40 times. I mean, I do it a few times a year. Um, and whenever I want to manifest something, so I wanted to manifest the sale of my business. That was also at a time, 2011, people were not fully, people still haven't rebounded from the 2009 financial crisis. It wiped out people's retirement savings. People lost their homes. So there wasn't a lot of, well, when we gave it to when we gave it to a realtor, there was we have a lot of hurdles, because of the 2009, 2010 financial crisis. And I refused to believe those thoughts. And I used my program to manifest the sale of my business. And in March of 2011, we sold our business for a cash deal. Um, and I use my program. So as you use my program to actually manifest something in your life, whether it be money, career, education, move a home, a car, a relationship, it's not just a program to manifest worldly goods. It's a program to personally evolve and personally develop yourself. You connect deeper to your spirituality through my program. And then the icing on the cake is you will have your manifestation by completing my program. So it's not just one of those manifestation programs where you're just going to get something for doing this program. You're going to find your spouse, or find a new career. It's You get more than that. It's a deeper program. You're going to get the spiritual transformation. You're going to get that deeper connection that you can rely on 24/7. You're going to evolve as a human being, that personal development side of the equation. And then the beautiful thing is, that's the best part of the program. And then you get your tangible physical manifestation on top of it. So it's a very comprehensive program that allows an individual to fully develop and evolve and fulfill themselves.
I love it. I love that. That's a very important distinction you make. You know, that it's not just to attain worldly goods.
Yes.
You know, that's I mean, when people were introduced to The Secret as a movie back in 2005 or six, that was what most people thought it was about,
Yes.
manifesting the red Mercedes, or the mansion home. And while those things can be very nice to play with, they're not ultimately fulfilling.
Right.
And what we are looking for, at least I think in terms of the next step of our evolution of humanity, is greater fulfillment. I think that's like what is the problem for most of society, is this lack of true fulfillment.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And so, and your book addresses that. What I'd like to get into now is some kind of like just deep questions about certain fundamentals in the book. For instance, it's said that intentional manifestation takes absolute faith. So how do you get to the point of absolute belief and trust and the unwavering knowingness that's required to manifest quickly, efficiently?
Can you just say the very first part? There's somebody deciding to.
Yeah.
Just the very first part. About manifesting intentionally?
Yes, yeah. It's said that intentional manifestation takes absolute faith. So how do you get to that point?
Going inward. It was key for me. And the journaling process that I talked to you about, which my program is a journaling process, it really allows us to be meditative with ourselves. And I do believe in an inner presence. So it allows me to engage in journaling, allows me to be really fully present with myself and with my inner presence. And that helps me to establish the profound trust. And when I have that trust, it really transcribes into complete knowingness, just a faith-based knowingness in a higher power, in a supreme being, that I am part of it and it is part of me. And the times in my life, which are thankfully far more than without, the times in my life that I felt connected to my inner being and I relied on its guidance, it was, no matter what I was going through, it made it possible. And I didn't have to suffer, even if it was a pretty difficult time, a pretty difficult moment. I didn't have to suffer. Suffering is optional, I feel. I feel that when you have faith and trust and this knowingness in this inner presence or a higher power, it alleviates the fear. And I think fear is crippling most people. Fear to move their lives forward. Fear to be afraid to be successful. Afraid to fail. Afraid to feel stuck. So for me, again, just connecting to that inner presence or that higher power does give me the trust, this knowingness that I'm not walking this planet alone. And I don't need the evidence. I don't need to physically see a spirit being or a guardian angel, because I have experienced enough times in my life to know that there is this guidance available to me, and I know it's available to everybody.
It seems like one of the other problems that get in the way of people's easy flow of manifesting. I mean, let's just say it frankly. First of all, that we are manifesting continually.
Yes.
It's just that what the book is ready to convey, and what so many of our spiritual and metaphysical teachers say,
yes,
is that the manifestation occurs all the time. What we want to do is have a sense of deliberateness to it.
yes,
Yes. And so what gets in the way of that? For so many people, not feeling worthy, not feeling as if they're enough gets in the way of it. And it's like trying and discovering that there was never anything wrong with you, that you're perfect actually, and that you're deeply loved, of course, um, by the seen as well as unseen aspects of the world. So it's like, how do does the book in any way address worthiness?
Oh, for sure.
Mhm.
I think that's a central message because in order for us to feel empowered or that we have the power to create ourselves, the book does drive us in the direction of knowing our worthiness. I, as you just said, I think the majority of people don't have a very healthy self-worth or a positive self-image about themselves, because of societal rules or societal image. If we don't fit within the molds of society, it's just a tick against what we feel about ourselves. So this book reminds us that we are worthy and deserving of all good, and it gives the avenue for an individual to start connecting to their own self-worth. I believe that we manifest to the extent of our own self-worth. I don't think we can manifest beyond our self-worth. Because if you believe in the law of attraction, it's attraction, 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 and everything comes to you based on your belief system about yourself and how you fit into this world. So if you have a low sense of value of yourself, I don't see how you can manifest anything beyond that. So this book empowers an individual to remember their self-worth and to own it so that they can use the principles of this book and they can continue to grow and develop themselves and then manifest to the same degree as they feel about themselves, the same value as they feel about themselves.
Well said. I love the way you just tied in self-worth with effective manifestation. That's such a direct line, and it's so true. That's a very important realization to have, that your self-worth is that important in terms of deliberate creation.
Yes.
Um,
And
so
in the book,
yeah,
oh,
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. I was going to say in the book, I use the term, I've coined it I coined it, but I downloaded it. It's called vibrational value.
Yes.
So it's creating a vibrational value. It's an inner vibrational value in our thoughts and our words, our beliefs, our behaviors, our attitudes, our moods, our actions. I call that our mindset. So it's creating a healthy vibrational value, an internal value that we bring out into this world.
Yeah. So, what is the role of gratitude and appreciation in creating effective change?
Everything. I am a firm believer in. I always say, give thanks and praise. I give thanks and praise for everything. I take an evening walk most nights, and I'll walk through the neighborhood, and I just look at, because every day it's not the same. The sky's different. The sunset's different. How the light hits the trees are different. So it's a gratitude walk, and I just give thanks and praise for all the beauty that's around me. But I think gratitude is one of the highest values, vibrational value that we can offer ourselves, but then also bring it out into the world. If we can't appreciate and have gratitude for what we already have in our lives, then how are we making room for anything more?
Yeah. And how are we being the magnetic resonance for
Yes,
more? Mhm.
Exactly.
Love it. Mhm. Later in your book, I think I've got it written down here, chapter 15, which the title is Reuniting with Your Fellow Human Beings. And you write, our power is in being one with the whole. We lose our innate power when we divide and separate or segregate ourselves from the whole. So how is reuniting with others a part of our journey?
It goes back to your very first question. Is the book relevant in 2009 as it is today? And we were talking about, the virus of fear and how we then disconnect and then we become isolated and we think we're taking this journey alone. And now there's a bee around my face. And we're not taking this journey alone. And so there's a lot of people who believe in spirit mediums, and they go to psychics and things like that, and they're looking for answers there. I'm a firm believer that there's 7 billion spirit beings on this planet. You have answers for me, I have answers for you, and the only way I will get a little piece of the puzzle of my life from you, that you have something to offer for me, is if I connect to you. But I feel that in every human connection, we are giving, we are exchanging information. And it might just be a casual conversation. Have you ever had a casual conversation? It could have been about really nothing, the weather, something in the community. But one little word or one little word, 2 words were said, and it really, maybe you'd even tell the person, but afterwards you left and you said, I needed that information.
Yes.
And it was just a casual conversation. I have found just through casual conversations, I really do get a lot of value. So I feel that we all hold a piece of this huge life puzzle, and we're only going to, we need each other. We need each other to exchange, to have this information exchange. And that's why we have to connect to one another. We can't do this alone. We can achieve our manifestations alone. It's boring. There's nobody to share it with at the end. And I used to do that in my 20s and 30s. I did everything by myself, and I was very goal driven. It was exhausting. I created incredible amounts of suffering. I didn't ask anybody for help. I didn't find any mentors. I wanted to kick the can down the road on my own and have my own successes and be able to not to be able to only see myself as the reason why. And that's it worked, but with a lot of strife and a lot of exhaustion. So I found a better way. I manifest now just as much, but it's easier because I am not taking this walk alone any longer. And I do tap into people and resources, and we need each other. We need each other to also stop the spread of fear. When we connect, we're less afraid. When we disconnect, that's when the fear really hits home.
When we connect, we're less afraid. That is such an important statement to make, and that our growth is dependent on others.
It is.
It's just, I really love that that's part of your book,
Thank you.
because that is such an important message now, to not retreat into ourselves too much. It's good, many of us do that in order to recharge and regenerate, but there comes a point where our personal growth, our happiness is dependent on interrelations with others. Not in a kind of codependent way, but in a way that is respectful, in a way that of course has terrific boundaries,
Yes.
and but is where we acknowledge that each of us is a light onto each other. And so we can learn so much from interactions that help us
Think
to.
of, think of a candle in a dark room. So one candle would represent one person and it gives off a little bit of a glow, right? And you put 10 candles in that same room, which represents 10 people, and look at the light it brings into that room. It will transform that space. And that's how I see individuals when we connect. We are each light, and we can do more together than we can either alone or apart.
So let's light up the world.
Exactly.
So in your 40-day divine creative process program, you say that we are born with desire and desire is born from us. How is desire a good thing? You know, given that we live in a consumer-oriented society where our desire for more has led to, you know, negative aspects, greed and avarice. So how is desire innocent in itself and creative?
That's a really great question, and there is a lot of greed and selfishness in this world. But I think when you're coming at it through like the principles in this book and the guidance from this book, it is a spiritual path. So when you are manifesting your desires, you're not doing it alone, and you're thinking about other people as well. Like for instance, the three questions we want to ask ourselves is, what do I want? You got to really identify what we want. And then the second question is, why do I want it? We really want to try to figure out why we want it, why it's important to us. And then the third question is, who will most benefit from this? And it's not just us. So, you know, in my 20s and 30s, I described just being very goal oriented. That was a different way of me achieving my desires. And I was on a selfish path. Sure, I shared what I had, but I still was on a selfish path because it was just very, I want this and I'm going to work really hard to get it. But coming through the principles of this book, because it is a spiritual based book, mind, body, spirit book, it allows you to bring your heart's desires out into the world, or to manifest your heart's desires, which I feel is different than one's ego desires, which is what I was manifesting in my 20s and 30s, my ego desires. It was to boost me up and bolster me up and make me feel proud of myself. And, you know, I could proclaim what I've acquired, but now it's different. These spiritual principles allow us to manifest our heart's desires, which I think is a more holistic approach to achieving our physical manifestations. It's not a selfish journey. It's a selfless process and a selfless attainment of our heart's desires.
That's an important distinction to make, that between our heart's desires and our kind of worldly mind desires, you know. Mm-hmm.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So another point you make in the 40-day program is that your success in manifesting your heart's desire is 100% reliant on your ability to raise your energy, your energetic vibration. Could you tell us more about that?
Yeah, that goes back to the term vibrational value. This program is designed for us to raise our vibrational value. And that is, again, it's how we feel about ourselves, it's our self-worth and our confidence and our connection. And it's having healthier thoughts, more deliberate, focused thoughts in a positive direction rather than in a negative direction. As you said a little while ago, we're always manifesting. So we're either manifesting what we want, which this book will teach us, or we're manifesting what we don't want, which is what most of society is doing. We're always manifesting. And people don't get that. when they have a lack of money, they're manifesting debt and lack and struggle. So we're always manifesting. So this book is designed to help us raise our vibrational value, our thoughts, our beliefs, our self-worth, our words, how we speak about ourselves, that inner self chatter, that inner self talk, and our outer talk, how we speak to others. And it gives, and then when we have that vibrational value in a elevated state through the law of attraction and through spirituality, we're able to create our heart's desires. So it's in alignment. When we raise our vibrational value, it's more in alignment with our heart's desires rather than our ego desires.
Well put. Well put. And a big aspect of your book and about the 40-day creative process is declarations. Most of us understand them as affirmations if we're tuned into that area of growth. And so you mentioned that there are 3 things to avoid when crafting a powerful declaration statement. And that is avoid dates and timelines, avoid predictions, and avoid impatience. So why does that get in the way of declarations?
Well, from my experience, when we put dates in, well, we could be saying, okay, in a year I want X, Y, Z, but the universe, there is no time in the universe. There is no time with a higher presence. It's timeless. It's eternal and it's timeless. And by us putting dates in, we could be prolonging a manifestation. But I also feel, more importantly, I feel that putting a date in detracts from our connection, our faith. If we're saying we have pure faith in our higher power to help us along, then why are we putting dates in? Why are we putting a date in for that higher power? Just so I think it really does take away from faith. And it's so dates, timeline, and the third one as well. I really just think that it takes away from our belief system. It's kind of chipping away at it. If we believe, we believe. And I used to put in dates and timelines and whatnot, and it seemed like it always would have taken that amount of time. And now that I don't do that any longer, things really do happen at lightning speed. Just real quickly, last year I was selling a home, and we had a lot against us as well with some different things that were going on around this property, other homes around this property. And I took out all the dates, the timelines. I used my program, and I didn't have any fear. I just stayed very steady and strong in my faith and my conviction and my knowingness that this property was going to sell. It was going to sell at full price, with no contingencies, and a very quick transaction. And there was a few other things that I had in mind, and it all literally manifested to a T. And I know somebody could say, yeah, seriously, but seriously, it was incredible. So I think it takes away, again, the dates and the timeline. I think it just chips away or takes away from the trust that this program is supposed to be building for each individual.
Very good. My last question is
Yes.
about the time it takes to implement the framework of your book into our lives. It seems like it could, take a good chunk of our daily experience to try to change our fundamental beliefs and enact new ways of seeing, new mindsets. So what kind of time does your process take? You write, upon the completion of the daily steps, you will create inner trust and reassurance that those few minutes were fundamentally necessary for the successful fulfillment of your life desires. You're talking about a few minutes here.
Hmm. I
So
am.
is that what we're talking about? Or is it
We really,
something like,
yes, no, we really are. See, it's a 6-step manifestation program, and I have found it very. You can do all the 6 steps in the morning, and anytime you want. I actually break them up. I have found, there is no right or wrong way to do this. I have found personally that I do the first 3 steps in the morning. I do the last 3 steps in the evening. It just works really well for me. These steps can be done one at a time, spread out through the entire day. They can be done all at once. But I don't, in the book, I recommend that we don't put more than 2 to 5 minutes in each step. So we're talking 2 minutes for each step, 6 steps. We're only talking 12 minutes if you did it on the low end. And if you did it on the high end, we're talking 30 minutes.
wow,
So for me, it's a 15-minute process in the morning and it's a 15-minute process in the evening because I do take about 5 minutes per step.
mhm, yes. And would you recommend that to be a part of a meditation as well?
Yeah, it would be very prudent to meditate directly after whatever steps you decide.
Mhm.
In fact, the third step, see it, is kind of meditative. It does have a meditative quality to it. It's asking you to be still, be quiet for just several minutes based on your declaration, what you're trying to manifest, so that you can start visualizing in your third eye. You can start giving it that inner blueprint, which I think is highly important to manifest anything. We have to start seeing it.
Well, that sounds so doable, so manageable.
It is.
Yes. And that's a kind of that's a very optimistic point to end our interview on. And I would like to, first of all, is there anything you'd like to say to wrap up?
I just want to thank you for this forum and for putting this together and asking me to be a part of this program. I'm most thrilled to be part of it. Sorry for the lawnmower and the saw, and my dog was barking. But again, they can be nuisances, or and they can be distractions. And for a lot of people, they would have found that as a nuisance or distraction. Or you can just go with whatever's in your environment and be okay with it.
That's it. That's it. Somehow it's all magic. It's
It's
all
all
magic.
perspective.
It's all part of life.
It is.
So how can our audience get in touch with you? How can they buy the book?
Yep. So you can buy the book on Amazon. Again, it's called Your Power to Create You, and the subtitle is Discover Your Inner Source of Abundance. And my personal website is growyourselfdaily at gmail or growyourselfdaily.com. And you can get a hold of me at growyourselfdaily at gmail.com.
Perfect. Perfect. So thank you again, Glenn, for being on the show. Really
Thank
appreciate
you, Kate. Me
it.
too.
And this has been T Post with the Thank You for Being You show. And thank you for being you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.